November 9th, 2020 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format we're using in response to Governor Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives order. This format enables the City Council to meet and take care of business while keeping its members, staff, and the public safe. For work sessions like this one, where there is no opportunity for public comment, those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meeting materials web page. Looking ahead, tonight's regular meeting will include a public forum. Information about how to participate in that meeting is available on the public webcast and meeting materials web page. And as always, other avenues of communication with me and the city councilors are available, including email and voicemail. Thank you so much for tuning in. And with that, I will turn it over to the manager for the first item on our agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm actually excited. I know sometimes we pack your agenda with things that are just like must-haves, must-dos, decisions you need to make. And every now and then we're able to find time to talk about some of the other great work we're doing in the city that maybe doesn't have that same time pressure. So we've had on the agenda for a while the hopes to have Dave Breitenstein, our wastewater division manager and treatment plant director, come give you an update on some of the resilience work we've did. So I believe that I'm turning it directly over to you, Dave, and I welcome you to the meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, with the assistance of engineering consultants, the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission completed a resiliency evaluation last year. So I've got a PowerPoint slide that I'm going to put up here, and we'll get the presentation going. So the goal was to establish a wastewater system that will meet the needs of our communities after a devastating natural disaster. And we completed a comprehensive evaluation of vulnerabilities and mitigation activities that provided for development of a disaster mitigation and recovery plan for our regional wastewater system. But a quick overview first of MWMC.
Hey, Dave, just if you're expecting slides to be up, they're not up and showing yet.
You're not, okay.
Okay. It wouldn't be a Monday night if somebody didn't have this.
You worked during the test. So I'll try it again.
So nothing is coming up. And are you clicking the share screen?
Yes.
Dave, okay.
I'm going back to share screen.
You might have to sign out and sign back in. Sometimes that works.
Another option is you can hit Alt-Tab to cycle through your screens to share until you find the right one.
Ooh, didn't know that one.
So I'm gonna sign back in, try that.
Okay.
This is all part of the resiliency work. I see him coming back. Looks like you're there now, Dave. There you go.
Okay, we can see your screen.
Hey, Dave.
Perfect.
I'm worried we don't have any audio for Dave.
There. Got the audio in?
Yes.
Okay. So my review of MWMC quickly, established through an intergovernmental agreement
What are
between
synonyms for?
Eugene, Springfield, and Lane County to provide wastewater treatment to the urbanized area. And Springfield provides administrative services while City of Eugene provides operational services. I also like to mention that Commissioner Ye is our current vice president, and a shout out to Walt Meyer and Peter Ruffier, who are Eugene's citizen representatives. So, yeah, the regional facilities include the treatment plant, which provides for 33 million gallons of flow each day, the biosolids management facility, 4 large pump stations, and we have the regional facilities also include all the pipe that carries combined flow of Eugene and Springfield, all the conveyance piping and pump stations that otherwise are owned by the respective cities and was not part of this study. The treated wastewater is discharged to the Willamette River, where the small amount is used as recycled water. And then the biosolids management facility out off of Aubrey Lane, it receives the treated solids from the treatment plant, stored in a lagoon, and then seasonally we dewater that and then apply it to agricultural land at agronomic rates. So the approach to resiliency planning was to assess vulnerabilities to develop a plan for recovery from 2 types of disasters: a magnitude 9.0 Cascadia subduction zone earthquake and a 500-year flood event, with consideration for higher flood levels, which are likely over the next 50 years due to climate change. And so the main parts of the project included first determining our service goals, a vulnerability assessment of all our critical infrastructure, the critical interdependencies within the organization, the external agencies, and with our suppliers that would be related to our recovery, and then all rolled up into a written disaster mitigation and recovery plan. So for level of service goals, the state legislature, they recognized the likely impact of a Cascadia earthquake and adopted a statewide resilience plan several years back. And that plan summarized the likely impacts of the vulnerabilities to all public utilities. The plan defined the performance targets that each sector, including water and wastewater utilities, must meet in order to establish adequate resilience over the next 50 years. The MWMC performance targets for our resiliency work are matched up exactly with that, with the statewide resilience plan. So let's take a closer look at that with the conveyance system, the pump station, and the pipelines. The recovery phases are set up as short-term, intermediate, and long-term. So that being what we're going to try to accomplish in the first week, and then the intermediate term up to 12 weeks, and then out to a year. So the level of service goals, these goals start with what we're going to try to be doing is reducing risks to public health due to sanitary sewer overflows, and then gradually increasing flow to the plant as we can over time, from, try to get 30% to it within the first 2 weeks, and by the 6th week, have 90% of the flow going. And then the level of service goal targets for treatment, similarly, they're also phased over a 1-year period, beginning with controlling threats to the public by initially diverting all of the flow through our emergency outfall, and then gradually taking on flow through the plant, hoping to provide some level of primary treatment in the first 2 weeks, and then better treatment with secondary treatment by 3 to 6 months, and then by 1 year being able to meet all of our standard regulatory requirements. As for structures, the target that we've selected for resilience of our structures, it's consistent with the Oregon Specialty Code that defines performance objectives. And so we're shooting right here for immediate occupancy. And there's one level higher, which is operational. That's going to be like the hospital, the fire stations, and police stations, who are going to need to be able to just work continuously through an event. Whereas we're going to, an earthquake hits, we're going to evacuate our buildings, but we'll be able to turn right around and expect to see only minor damage, and we'll be able to expect to be able to go back into those and go to work. That's where we need to be at to meet our level of service goals. So right now, though, because most of our facilities were built in about 1979, they were all built to the level of life safety and collapse prevention. So if something happened tomorrow, we expect we'd be able to get out. We hope we could all successfully evacuate, but it would most likely not be safe to re-enter, and that would not allow us to work towards meeting our service goals. So here, just a snapshot of the overall findings of the geotechnical evaluation part of the report, which included some good news, and that is that part is that there's no significant areas of liquefaction or areas that the regional facility is susceptible to landslides, which those types of events or effects of earthquakes can cause just devastating damage where entire facilities may have to be rebuilt. That's not where we're at, but there's still going to be moderate ground shaking and enough to cause significant damage to our facilities. So, and then there's several locations along the East Bank Interceptor. That's the line that conveys all the flow from Springfield and East Eugene to the plant, that was identified that we need to take a closer look at, as well as some other specific areas here and there where we weren't able to do, consultant wasn't able to do a complete evaluation. And so more in-depth evaluation needs to be done to figure out some of the mitigation activities that we need to do to harden our conveyance system. So here's an example. I'll show you some examples of what we found, what was found at some of our pump stations. The Irvington pump station is in North Eugene. It's an underground station. It's a buried one, yeah, being underground. And it is expected structurally to do okay. The things that we need to give attention to, though, and this is common throughout a lot of our pump stations and other facilities, is we have a lot of pipes to convey wastewater, but it is lacking the appropriate bracing that will be needed to withstand any damage from a quake, as well as a lot of our electrical panels and electrical switch gear, control panels. We need to be ensure that they're properly anchored to their bases. Over at the Glenwood pump station, in addition to pipe bracing and anchoring of electrical panels, there's cracking in walls and the floor that needs to be further analyzed to determine what caused that and what type of repairs are needed. The oldest pump station over in Springfield, although it's a small one, it provides a service to us, but unfortunately it will likely collapse in an event unless we do something with that. It's built with this, what they call a free story type of construction, where this is all right here below the roof is glass. And so it does not have good roof wall connections. So it would likely need to be rebuilt. And then Kinsey pump station. This is our largest pump station that's directly across the river from the plant. It conveys all of the flow from Springfield and everything that from the east side of Eugene, also from the Glenwood area over to the plant. And it needs probably some better ties on the roof wall connections. And also we found some cracks. There are some cracks over there in the foundation that need to be further investigated and repaired. And we also have some major electrical equipment over there. Again, need to make sure that's adequately secured to its bases. And then the Owosso Bridge. The Owosso Bridge is right in the same area. And the evaluation identified a concern about the ability of the bridge to withstand a large quake. And the concern here is with this beam and pier connections, that could fail in an earthquake. And that's a big concern to us because all the flow from the Kinsey pump station, in the top right picture, that pipe is mounted directly underneath the bridge, as well as all of these power conduits from across the river. That is the treatment plant's emergency backup power supply. So the disaster recovery and mitigation plan includes recommendations on follow-up to things like this. So the recommendation is we're going to be looking at how to reinforce that bridge, and it may be something like this steel jacket that hardens that point where the pier to beam interface is. But also this was the other area that still needs further evaluation of the bridge abutments to get a better idea of the bridge's ability to withstand a quake. So now moving on to the treatment plant. The performance goal for the treatment plant on the first day is just to provide, if nothing else, an avenue to get the wastewater flowing out, and not through the plant, but through the plant's emergency overflow. So it could be, we could apply some chemical and disinfect it if we get a system built for that purpose, but we do have the emergency overflow in place. So the plan is, and this is how the plant is designed with this, so that if the plant cannot receive all or any of its flow, the flow will go to the river. And that, although that's not good, that's much better than it backing up and flooding everyone's homes and streets and out in the community where it's a much greater public health threat. So the intermediate term, in the first 2 weeks, we hope to get some wastewater flow going through the plant. This is where we'd remove large sticks, rags, and other debris. And then primary clarification can remove a half to 2/3 of the regular pollutants that are in wastewater. And we get that much going and disinfected to the river. We'd be happy in the first 2 weeks. And then looking out within 3 to 6 months after a devastating quake, we would, our target is to have our secondary treatment process up and running. So it's this combination of aeration basins and secondary clarifiers where dissolved and fine particulate pollutants are converted to solids that can be settled and removed from the treatment process. And then, of course, all that would still be disinfected before discharge to the river. So as far as the structural deficiencies at the plant, again, in order to meet our level of service goals, we need to be able to, after a quake, get back in and work inside of our buildings. So with the original structures being built about 40 years ago, they're going to need upgrades primarily due to their deficiencies with their roof to wall connections. And then, however, the more recent structures, they're in much better condition and won't need as much improvements to withstand a quake. The process tankage, overall, it's in good condition as far as the exterior walls. It's not going to break apart and like just collapse. It's pretty strong, but there is concern about some of the internal walls in some process tankage, but also the mechanical equipment inside our process tanks is not going to fare well with moderate shaking of a large quake. So that's where the damage is likely to occur. And that's where our focus will be in repairs and getting things back up and running. And here's an example, just 4 different types of buildings on the treatment plant. They're box or rectangular shapes with few, if any, internal supports or walls. So that's why these roof wall connections are so important to be strengthened. And then our operations building, this serves as the base for all of our plant operations. It's our emergency command post, so to speak, during an event. And this building would require removal of the ceiling, the roof, and all of the interior walls in order to perform the upgrades that would be necessary to bring this up to immediate occupancy. So we will have a big decision ahead as to whether we go ahead and do a big upgrade like this, or whether it will just be better to start over with a new building. And then throughout the plant, as I mentioned before, like at the pump station, and there's a lot of piping throughout the plant and a lot of electrical panels, and we just have a lot of this lateral bracing and anchoring of panels to do. The picture on the right is a more recent process building that we constructed, which is done the right way. You can see here how these pipes that are going across the room have these anchors, braces for support, as well as here over across the wall. So we need to go through our facility and get everything up to shape like that. So now look at what the likely impacts could be of a flood and our approach to that. Our level of service goal for a 500-year flood event will be to be back up and running within 7 days once floodwaters have receded. So our plan, it incorporated also the likely changes we expect to see in flood elevation due to climate change, and how that would be change a current day's look at a 500-year event. So for planning purposes, a conservative estimate was assumed to increase the 500-year floodplain elevation by another 12 inches. So if we look at the map here, we can see here's the treatment plant, and here's the river that's running along it. And the 500-year floodplain is this area that's colored in blue, which the inundation from that would go and affect our Willa-Kinsey pump station, but not so much the treatment plant. However, if we add 12 more inches due to if that were to happen with increased flood elevations with climate change, the inundation would be encroaching into the plant. And this is just, a crude estimate, this 12 inches. If it's only like, let's say 2 more inches or 4 more inches higher, it's probably going to be, it'll be at the doorstep of most areas of the plant. And then just one more shot, overview map of over at the Glenwood area, and the wet weather control facility pump station. This is the one where I said it would likely collapse, this is where the old Springfield plant site used to be. Anyway, that area wouldn't be impacted, but Glenwood definitely would, with adding in 12 more inches elevation to the current 500-year floodplain. So our approach to our mitigation activities associated with flooding, our plan will be to elevate all of our electrical switchgear, our transformers, and other critical equipment to get it above those floodplain elevations. And we're going to be doing this over the years as our current equipment reaches the end of its useful life. It's not practical or realistic for us to go in here and do all this within the next couple of years, but as our equipment again reaches the end of its useful life, we'll apply these types of upgrades. Plus, we will can also use berms around these structures to protect them. Then the resiliency work also included an evaluation of our interdependencies. So the objectives of that were to identify our top 10 dependencies that would have the greatest impact on our ability to recover, and then to identify mitigation strategies that would help prevent stalling of our recovery. And so the approach to this is for us to concentrate and identify those things that we're going to need the most from the time of an event through the first phase and intermediate service goal. So as far as those dependencies go, this is what we came up with. Our most important dependency, number one, is our staff and family readiness. So without staff, nothing can really happen. And secondly, it's very important that our city and roads operate so they have access to work, and we have access to our facilities that we need to get to perform necessary mitigation, repairs, and response. And third, the communications, whether it's communicating with ourselves, those people other external agencies we rely on, or just communications within the plant, alarm systems and control systems and such. So I'm not going to go through all the rest of these, but all of these are critically important to our success for response and recovery work. And they're all tied together too, in many cases. If one fails, it's going to have a likely impact on the others. So we have a plan that includes an array of some starting points of mitigation activities that we can address those. Now, what's all this going to cost? A lot. The estimated cost for disaster mitigation is $34.5 million, with an ongoing cost of an estimate of $100,000 to put towards how we can make improvements and better prepare ourselves, our readiness related to our interdependencies. So all the mitigation activities, they'll be ongoing and implemented over a indefinite period of time. This year, we're going to prioritize our near-term mitigation projects. And so we'll likely be completing the evaluations on the concrete cracking that I showed you at the pump stations, trying to finish up the assessment of the Owosso bridge to really know what we need to do there to harden that bridge so it can withstand a quake. And we'll also take a look at wherever pipe channels go underneath waterways, like through our the Canoe Canal. There's channels, and over by Delta we have pipe going underneath waterways. There's some localized areas that there could be liquefaction issues there because it's sandier soil. So we need to take a closer look at those. And then we're also gonna, this next coming year, get better prepared with have some large repair kits on hand for large pipes. So if they break, that we'll have kits available to go out and perform some repairs, which we don't have right now. So we will also be updating the MWMC's facilities plan probably within the next few years, and the long-term mitigation projects can be incorporated into it and into the 20-year capital improvement plan. So that's the overview I had for you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you so much. I found that very interesting and illuminating, and appreciate how thorough and thoughtful. It's a little bit daunting for those of us who don't understand these systems very well, and it helps to have you kind of walk through and know what we're facing as a community and what your preparations are. I have Mike in the queue, so Mike, I'll let you kick it off.
Thank you, Mayor, very much. I appreciate the report very, very much. That was incredibly thorough, Dave. Thank you very much. First question would be, of the 34 million to put us in a place where we are resilient to either one of those options with regard to disasters. I know you've just finished this, and thank you very much and all your staff for the work. But do we have any preliminary ideas about funding sources on any of this at all?
So, yeah, good question. As I mentioned in the presentation, the city of Springfield provides administrative services. So they do a lot of work in preparing keeping up a good financial plan for the commission. And also the commission is in really good shape right now in terms of its reserves. I think, maybe, don't quote me on this, but I think around $75 million in reserves. Oh. And we also have probably a lot more process improvements to make too. So there's other big ticket items coming down the road, and then there's also the commission has earthquake insurance. And so that's part of how a mitigation approach to at least the financial impacts of this. So nothing that I recall when this presentation information was first given, the commission really caused them great alarm, but it's more, it got everyone's attention. We know we need to embark on some large expenditures. And this again is over the next 50 years. It's not something we're trying to complete in 10 years, but by 50 years, we'll be able to meet all of these service goals.
Thank you, and I appreciate the hard work of the commission over time, Councilor Ye, and certainly and others, and Councilor Polling before her that worked on that for so long, that have apparently left us in a reasonably strong position financially to deal with some of this, and that's great. That's good to hear. This may be a question for Sarah. I don't know how new this is. In other words, when this was completed. Is there any portion of this or percentage of this that's already listed on CIP?
Well, this is, if I can answer that. This
Sure.
is not the city of Eugene, but this will be Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission CIP.
Gotcha. Will we have it? But we'll have a chunk of that, I would think. Would we not? As our responsibility?
No, the
Okay.
MWMC would be take all of it on for the regional facilities. There's still the local conveyance system that
Right.
the city would be responsible for.
Okay. Thank you very much. That answers all my questions. Appreciate it.
Alan.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Very thorough. One of the things I've learned over the years is there's no such thing as cheap infrastructure projects. They just don't exist. If they are, we didn't probably need to do them. The Owosso Bridge that you're worried about, when was that built? Do you know?
Yeah, that was built also in the late 70s. It was actually part of the wastewater regional facility construction, and that's really why the pipe is underneath it.
Same time frame. Okay, yeah. 79-ish.
I might also mention another good use for that bridge is it was built in order to be able to as a way for emergency vehicles to access and use as well. That was the intent.
Okay. In case there's no access.
Yeah, so another important reason to get it upgraded.
Yeah, that makes it doubly important. So plant costs about $250 million to build, but that's old dollars. It's probably to replace the whole plant, $300+ million. So this is like 10% of replacement cost to get it up to speed where we could potentially have something that could withstand an earthquake. Is that a fair way to look at this?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we have $335 million of insurable assets.
Okay. Yeah, so 10% almost exactly. All right. Well, since I got you, can you give us an update on the COVID project you did and the RNG project that you guys are doing that's under construction? Real quick.
Yeah. Okay, so we're sampling weekly at the plant, and then this last weekend, we also assisted OSU with going out and sampling the conveyance system in association with our community testing. Right now, I sent you the link out to, there is a dashboard on OHA's website that shows the results of the wastewater sampling. And so far, every week they're detecting COVID or the virus in our wastewater. However, it is only a qualitative test, not a quantitative. So we only know it's present. But I received an email today. They're working on also trying to come up with data that will provide a quantitative expression for impact as well. So maybe we'll be getting more. And then as the RNG project, that's to take our digester gas and convert it entirely to renewable fuel and not be burning off any excess that we're currently not using to generate electricity. That project is on schedule and construction's underway with startup. That schedule is anticipated for late spring of next year is when we're anticipating startup. So we'll be selling the brown gas probably. There are no agreements in place yet, but likely to Northwest Natural. And then the the environmental attributes, those credits will be sold as well.
Into the California market for
Yes.
Clean Fuels program.
Yep.
Great. Yeah, that's a really good. Both of those are great projects. On the COVID project, is it possible to get more location specific so that you could identify hotspot areas, or is it just going to be kind of on a grander, bigger, cumulative scale?
For right now, I know it's just on a grander scale. We're doing this supporting OSU's efforts. We're not in the driver's seat, so
yeah,
we're going where their research project takes them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is a research project, so yeah, great. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
Hey, thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. And thanks, Steve, for coming today and presenting. I just wanted to share some stuff about MWMC that folks may not be aware of. And I was sure Dave would not, because he's not a bragging kind of guy. So I'm going to do the bragging for him. So for 13 years straight, they received the Peak Performance Platinum Award. And the award I'm actually really more excited about. It's a third year in a row, the EPA Daily Monitoring Report Quality Assurance Study, which the way I was described to me is they send 42 blind samples to our lab, and we got every single one of them right through our analysis. And that is apparently very difficult, and that's been 3 years in a row now. So I think that's a real shout out to what a good job we're doing of, protecting our community, protecting the environment, and getting our stuff right. Alan already mentioned the RNG project, but along another project that was recently finished was that our water quality lab and maintenance building was completed. And so we now have a state-of-the-art lab situation going for us. And so we can continue to expect great results out of that. And I also just want to mention, Dave, you've been with us since before the regional plant was completed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, so Dave is a great resource. I mean, he's been here through this whole thing. He knows how great all of this works and how Springfield and Eugene and Lane County work so well. And he's right. Springfield does an awesome job of supporting us and giving us great financial advice. And we're in a really good place right now for whatever comes our way. So I just wanted to do a shout out to all of our staff who does such a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that. That was great to hear. And yeah, thank you very much for this report. It's very enlightening. So I appreciate it. And I am excited about all of the innovations that you're moving forward on, which are that RNG project that's going to be pretty exciting when that really comes online in the spring. So thank you very, very much. I think if every counselor who wants to speak has had a chance, I think we are can finish this business. Thank you very much again for your report. And I think we're ready to transition to our next agenda item. So I am going to turn that back over to the city manager.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe that Kevin is ready to just kick us off in a presentation. I'm excited to hear.
I am. Thank you. I will share my screen and we'll get going. I trust everyone is seeing the first slide. Great. My name is Kevin Altucker. I'm the lead staff for the Ad Hoc Committee on Police Policy Reform. So I want to thank everyone for this opportunity tonight. Mayor, city councilors, thank you. I've got 7 slides. I'm going to tell you some information that you probably already know, but also I'm going to give you some information that may be new to you. So the purpose of my presentation tonight is to give you an update on what the Ad Hoc Committee has been up to, and also give you information so that you can consider potential actions related to the Ad Hoc Committee timeline, the committee compensation, and some budget issues. And this is a good time for me to thank my fellow city staff, in particular, Kaz Zadie and Michael Kennison. we would not be where we are without those two folks. And also, I want to give a shout out to the Ad Hoc Committee themselves. We have 30 committed and engaged community members who have put their shoulders to this really difficult process of reviewing Eugene police policy on Zoom. And it has been challenging at times. So thank you to the Ad Hoc Committee. And then finally, a thank you to Mo Young, who is facilitating this process. We couldn't do it without Mo. The purpose, of course, this is something that you know. The Ad Hoc Committee's charge is to review Eugene police policies in light of Campaign Zero and 21st Century Policing and issue a report to City Council by January 31st, 2021 that makes recommendations for changes. The guiding principles, of course, are 21st Century Policing and Campaign Zero. And the 21st Century Policing project has kind of 6 foundational pillars, is what they call them. Campaign Zero has 10 kind of separate components. And these are important when I show you the next slide, because we have synthesized these two bodies of literature, 21st Century Policing and Campaign Zero. We've mushed them together and we've come up with a list of common topics. And there are 11 of them, and you can see them there on the right-hand side of the slide. Number 1, limit use of force, and all the way down to number 11. Now, what I want to tell you is that the Ad Hoc Committee went through a prioritization process. So we sent a survey out and we asked each committee member to list their priority topics from number 1 to number 11. And so almost all 30 members completed that survey. We had a good response rate. And this is how the priorities shook out. So number 1, as you can see, is the limit of use of force. Number 2, hiring and training. Number 3, community oversight. And number 4, body-worn cameras. Now, there's a red box around those top 4, and that's an important thing to note, because under our current timeline of completing the report by January 31st, 2021, these were the 4 topics that we could accomplish, that we could cover in that time. And that's going to be important as we talk about looking at the timeline as originally thought, and then looking at perhaps an extended timeline. So the next 2 slides I'm going to show you are the timeline. The first one is going to be the existing. This is what we've got today in place. And so let me just step you through that quickly. Of course, the magenta line is the timeline starting in September, when we had our first meeting on the 30th. So you can see everything above that magenta timeline is the full Ad Hoc Committee meeting. Everything below that magenta timeline are the subcommittees. Now, many of you know that subcommittees were approved by the Ad Hoc Committee and on October 27th. And so we have now populated that timeline with those subcommittees. So if you see on this particular slide, starting on September 30th, we started with some introductions and kind of scoping the work. That was our first meeting. The second meeting, we had presentations on community oversight from Citizens Review Board and the Police Auditor's Office. And you can see we sent out the prioritization survey after that meeting. The third meeting is where the Ad Hoc Committee approved the formation of subcommittees. And so we had the subcommittees start meeting after that. Number 4, the 4th meeting is coming up tomorrow night, and that's going to be, the topic is use of force. And so we're going to have presentations from Eugene Police Department on use of force. Committee members will be able to ask questions about Eugene police policies on use of force. Tomorrow night is also, we're going to have our community oversight subcommittee make a report to the full Ad Hoc Committee. So you can kind of see this rhythm that we've gotten into. So we're going to have these full ad hoc committee meetings where presentations are going to be made to establish, hey, this is what's going on now. These are the policies in place now. These are how they're administered. The subcommittee will then meet after that. Then they will make a presentation at the next large ad hoc committee with recommendations and perhaps motions. Now, you can see that this timeline ends at the end of January, and under the current plan, our report will be done at the end of January. The next slide I'm going to show you is looking at possibly extending that timeline a bit. And it looks like this. And the major features that I want you to get from this slide is that if we extend the timeline to the end of March, we believe that we can address all 11 of those topic areas. So if you remember back, when we looked at Campaign Zero and 21st Century Policing, 11 major topic areas kind of fell out from that synthesis. We believe if the timeline is extended to the end of March, that we can address all 11 of those. It's an aggressive timeline. I'm not going to lie to you. This is really going to be crunch time. And it's also important to know that several groups, including the Ad Hoc Committee, has recommended that the timeline be extended to the end of April. So it would add another month to this particular timeline. NAACP has made a similar statement, as well as the Human Rights Commission. If we had additional time, of course, we could spread this meeting schedule out a bit. And it's challenging, as you know, to get meetings scheduled and to get the meetings written up and get the information sent back out to the committee. So if we had till the end of March, we could address all 11 topic areas. If we had more time, then we could spread those meetings out a bit more. And finally, the potential actions that are possible from council is, of course, to extend the timeline, extend the current January 31st, 2021 deadline for the ad hoc committee to complete its work. The second item is authorize additional funds to compensate committee members for their work on the subcommittees. And if you remember, council approved to pay members for the work on the entire ad hoc committees. Subcommittees weren't even, in anyone's thought at that point. Subcommittees were formed and approved on the 27th of October. And now we have a situation where council can consider compensating time for that subcommittee work, all right? And of course, there's going to be more meetings. And if the timeline is extended, there's going to be more ad hoc committee meetings. There's going to be more subcommittee meetings. And so that could have an effect on the budget. The other possible action is to adopt a resolution to compensate committee members for both ad hoc and the subcommittee meetings and provide the payment. This is an important point, to provide the payments in 3 installments. And so so that the ad hoc committee members don't have to wait until the end of the process to receive those payments. And of course, another choice is to take some of these actions or none of the actions. I'm going to stop sharing and be happy to answer any questions that you may have for me.
Thank you so much. That was a great summary of this process. I've been watching the process and really appreciate what it has taken for the committee members to sort of dial in what they need to do and how they need to do it. And the fact that they signed on for a few months of meetings and now we're suggesting that, well, they need a few months more and they're willing to do that is a credit to their willingness to really do this thoroughly. So thank you for that. I have Greg, then Claire, then Alan. So Greg, kick it off.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate the report. and the items that you suggested in terms of making some changes. So on the first item, and we talked about this, I think last week or so, I get confused sometimes, about extending the time. And I know that people wanted to go to the end of April. I think the end of March is a good marker, a good time to wrap things up. If necessary, we could add on a few weeks at that time or a time before that, depending on where the subcommittees are in their work and where the overall committee is within its work. The other couple of things, and I brought up this at the last committee meeting, that we needed to be, real clear about, what was going to be the payments to the committee members, when they were going to get it, how that was going to shake out. A lot of people were confused about that. I think that we put some structure to it that'll end all of that kind of speculation. And then, dealing with the possible increase on the general fund side. I know this is coming out of the city manager's budget. So, I can beg Sarah a little bit to say, can you tweak us up a little bit more so that we can get this thing done? I would rather get this, we can do it two ways. We can do it fast, or we can do it right. And I would rather do it right than do it fast. These are complicated issues. They're issues that are of high concern to the community. And of course, the police on the other side of this too. And I shouldn't say the other side. I think we're all on the same side. So we want a better police force. We want better training. We want better hiring protocols. And look to reduce the use of force as much as possible. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Claire, and then Alan.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Kevin, for this briefing. I really appreciate your work, the work of the other staff, and the work of all of these committee members. I'm really impressed. Councilor Zelenka has encouraged us to try to attend the subcommittee meetings, and I just haven't had the capacity to do that, but I hope to join the November 30th meeting, because I think it takes place at a Monday evening, and we don't happen to have a city council meeting that night, so I can do that. I'm definitely supportive of extending the timeline. I'd be willing to do it until April. I'm super impressed and grateful that the committee members are willing to commit to the work in this way. I think it's important work. I think it's worthy. I did have one question of one of the subject areas. So I served on the police commission for a time, and before that I was the ACLU of Oregon advocate who attended police commission meetings, and I'm not aware that we engage in a broken windows policing approach. So if we do, that would be news to me, and obviously I totally support the committee looking at that, but it might be an item that is quickly buttoned up, because I'm not aware of it being a philosophy that even Chief Kearns and nor Chief Skinner has taken. So I just called that out. For this item of the proposal to increase the compensation, compensating members that exceed $12,000. So is that a estimation of how much it would cost to extend to March? Or is that including possible compensation for the subcommittee meetings?
So yes to both. So it would be the added cost for the time extension, which would allow us more ad hoc full meetings and also more subcommittee meetings, and also pay folks for participating on the subcommittee.
Yeah, so I'm in support of both. If they're doing committee work and those are formal subcommittee meetings, I support being the compensation extended to those meetings. And I would support us adopting a resolution that does those in 3 installments, though that seems to me an administrative task that staff could decide without us making a motion. But if that's needed, I support all of those recommendations.
Okay, Alan and then Jennifer.
Thanks, Mayor. We're doing it by resolution because we did it by resolution the first time, so we need to do it by resolution again. That's why we're doing it by resolution.
That's correct. And we need to, from the ethics law, for you all to establish the compensation package. So that's fine.
Okay. And then, so what was the original budget? It's $12,000 the cost for the increment, the additional meetings. What was the original?
The original budget, well, I'm going to answer it this way. Once we were able to establish the meeting schedule, working around holidays and breaks and whatnot, we came up with 8 full committee meetings and 4 subcommittee. The cost for that was $8,040. If we go to the end of March, the total cost with the additional full committee meetings and the subcommittee meetings is going to be $15,810. Keeping in mind that we don't have 100%, participation at every meeting, folks they have conflicts and whatnot. So these are
estimates,
maximum estimates. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's not concerned about that. I think it's a good investment. And the end of March, by the way, is not March 30th. I know that because March 31st is my birthday, unless someone knows something about March that I don't know. The end of March is actually March 31st. And I think that the end of March, whatever day you choose to call that, is just fine too. And if we need to add more time when it gets towards that period of time, if we need to add more time, we could certainly do that again by council motion. I don't think that would be a problem, especially if they're moving along. They just maybe need a little bit more discussion. The original timeline was really because we believed that that the community was concerned about us not moving fast enough. And so we wanted to, I think the original timeline was December 31st, not January 31st. So we were worried about that being not too late. So I think Greg had it right. We want to do this right instead of fast, and especially since the committee is actually talking about this and saying they want to do that. So hats off to them for wanting to do this more work. And important work and participate. And I participated in all of the meetings so far of the council ad hoc committee. So thanks to all those people for working through this. And I think I could support all 3 motions.
Thank you, Jennifer, and then Mike.
Thank you. So thanks, Kevin, and everyone, and especially Mo, who's not here, but for all the hard work. So when I first envisioned adding extra time going through March, I didn't realize that we were going to try to get all 11 into that schedule, because that seems really tight to me. People are so busy as it is with just regular life, and then having 3. I have concerns about whether that's realistic for enough people to be able to come. Because if we're losing a lot of people at each meeting, then it kind of defeats the purpose of getting enough voices in the room. And my other concern is that I'm not sure that all of these topics are a 1 meeting issue. I would not be surprised if some of them, like use of force, just cannot be finished in 1 meeting. I just finished watching the subcommittee meeting, and that was like a relatively easier topic, I think, than some of the others, just because of the work that's already been done. And you guys filled up that 2 hours easily and probably could have kept going. There probably, you know, if you had had more time. So I don't know how to, my feedback to you is I'm not sure that it's realistic, that plan. It's very, like you said, it's very ambitious, and it might just be trying to shove too much. You know, we want to do it, like we keep saying, we want to do it right, not quick. And I just have a lot of concerns about the timeline. But I'm very supportive of the compensation. I think we've already clearly stated why that's important, and we should do that. I actually really like the idea of 3 installments. However that needs to be done, I think that's a smart move. And I'll support the March, but I'd be okay with April too. I just don't want to shove everything in just to say we did it.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. My question is, I think, for Catherine. Please refresh my recollection here. I believe as a part of the motion, the original resolution, excuse me, at least a part of the conversation was the idea that since this group intentionally is to serve the opportunity to hear from, to give a voice to an underrepresented part of our community, that we had the conversation around the fact that it's not representative of the whole community, but it's very intentionally representative of a portion of our community that isn't heard from strongly enough, loudly enough, frequently enough, well enough. And so as a part of that, I remember us putting into the resolution that then their recommendations would be presented to the police commission in full, since they are the body we created to make recommendations about police policy. Do I have that correct?
No. The police commission isn't a part of any direction that was given. This body that you created reports and makes recommendations directly to you.
Well, I remember us talking about it's not, you know, it's not going to come to us as a recommendation that represents the whole community, but it's a recommendation that represents a portion of our community that we want to hear from, and then we'll make decisions about adoption with that caveat in mind. I would hope that we can consider the idea of putting this through the police commission too, so that it becomes more representative of the community and process, and the things that come forward, the council come forward as concrete suggestions for policy change that again have a broader support base than just part of our community, or I guess we will take that into account. I am concerned that a part of this work was to be, as was mentioned, I think by Alan, that for us to be responsive to the concerns of a portion of our community, and having it drag on for almost a year after the original concerns were raised is a little long for me. But I understand the need to have those discussions thoroughly. So I certainly agree with the idea that those who the council have agreed to pay should be paid along the way rather than in one big chunk at the end. Although I'm not in favor of paying volunteers for a committee like this just in general. I think I voted for it as we went forward, but I'll think about that as we go. Thank you.
Okay, I see this. Manager, did you have something you wanted to add? And Betty, I see you. I'll get to you next.
You know, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to answer a couple of the questions that I think I've heard sprinkled through about the budget and how we pay for that. And I think the original proposal was based on how many committee meetings we thought there would be and a stipend paid at the end, which is why we're asking you to change the resolution to allow that flexibility so we can make those administrative decisions. You've already sort of given your policy direction to pay these individuals. And so I think what we're just looking for is confirmation that you intend for that to apply across the subcommittees and the rest of the extended timeline. And then when I present a supplemental budget to you, We had proposed paying for this out of council contingency, which I think at the time there was 12,000 left in that. And so I'll just be making a proposal that we expand your council contingency to make sure we can cover this. And then if there's leftover, you can always use it on some other council contingency.
Okay, thank you for that. I have Chris and then Betty.
Thank you. Yeah, the pay part I'm comfortable with, and I guess the one thing I would want to talk about is it's very process oriented. I've watched now a couple of these meetings, and I think Jennifer is really on the right track. This is a group of people that are not normally used to working together. They're not used to being in the same room together. And if you've ever been in these kind of processes where you put groups of people together and expect them to work like a team, it would be, you put 30 people in a boat, give them all oars and say, we've got to cross the lake in 30 minutes. And then none of them have ever been in a boat before. Some of them have never used an oar before, and you expect them all to row across the lake. We need a certain amount of time for everybody to figure out how to all pull at the same time. That takes time. And I watch the meetings, and this is absolutely no comment on the quality of the people on the committee. They are great, caring people, but it takes 30 minutes just to approve the minutes because it's not a process they're used to doing. And so to say, we all got to start pulling on these oars and we got to get across this lake by even March is a big challenge. And I agree, if we try to take on all 11 topics with a group of people that have to just learn to row together before we can even think about getting across the lake, it's going to take a while to do. And in all fairness to the ability for this process to work, you got to give it enough time to work. And by that, I mean, they need some time practicing being a team that trusts each other and that trusts the people that are working with them. Because you hear, I don't know whether I can trust you. I don't know if I can trust what you're saying. I have to be with you long enough to feel confident that we're all working together to try to accomplish the same thing. And that just takes time. So yeah, March definitely as just a starting point we need to get to. We could have never gotten this done in a quality way by December. It may take longer than that to get it done by March, but at least it's going to give us a much better shot to get comfortable rowing together, and then maybe we can get across the lake. So I wouldn't be surprised if this took longer than that, and it takes how long it needs to take to produce a quality result. That for me is the bottom line. So that's kind of my 2 cents on having observed the process so far.
Thank you. Betty.
Thank you. First, I have a question. How much are we paying the facilitator?
The facilitator, Mo Young, is volunteering her time.
Thank you. My opinion is everybody should be volunteers should not be paid at all. I'm strongly opposed to that. But I remember when we created the police commission, it was 15 years ago, maybe, or 20 years. Anyway, I remember it, and they were supposed to give advice on police policy. So now we're creating something totally different. I don't understand why we would be doing this. We already had a police commission. We have a city council, which is supposed to deal with policy. And as I understand it, it's the police chief who finally decides on policy anyway. So I think that it's too late now because you've decided differently, but I think it's the police commission that should be discussing policy, and that's supposedly what they're for. If we're going to create a whole new body, maybe we should abolish the police commission. And also we should include a lot more of the community than the select groups that have been included if we're having, but I don't, as far as the community being in a hurry for this, what I hear from the community is the things that people are concerned about are the homeless situation and traffic. And I haven't heard anybody, I don't think there's any widespread concern about the police. There is definitely on the homeless situation, there are two sides to that. People who think, why don't we find a place for everybody to be. And the other one is, why don't we get them off the streets and out of people and away from the river? Which it's could be, but that's what people are concerned about. And traffic, I get questions all the time, complaints about why don't we control the traffic? And it isn't even safe to cross the street downtown, as some of us have experienced. I will be voting against these motions, but I know they're going to pass. And I want to know, when they come up with their recommendations, in will they expect the police to adopt them? That's a question.
Are you directing the question at me, Councilor?
Yes,
Taylor?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, I can answer that. The committee has an understanding that the recommendations that they provide will be given to the City Council for the Council's consideration.
Okay, and then they will expect them to be adopted probably. And if the council decides they want to adopt them, then will the police chief, what will he do?
Well, that I don't know. I
But
can't answer
council
that.
does not determine police policy, I understand.
Correct.
We're supposed to deal with policy, but not police policy. We could make recommendations. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 counselors in the queue for a second round, but I just wanted to jump in for a minute. 2 things, and one is it kind of in response to Betty's comments, is just a reminder, this is an ad hoc committee, and an ad hoc committee is, designated to do a specific time-limited focus on a particular issue. So it's different from the police commission, which does ongoing work and where those commissioners are there for several years. And so this is an additional, right? It's additional insight that this ad hoc committee brings to the issue, and that it was created because of a specific demand that was very robust and very loud and in our streets all summer. This was council really stepping up in a very responsive way to address concerns that were broadly felt across the community. The other thing I would just say in response to Jennifer and Chris's concerns, and I agree, and Kevin, you said this, very ambitious to address all 11. And I think that it speaks to the committee's desire to be very thorough and to do as much as they can, and for everyone to address those policy issues. But what I've witnessed about both the full committee and the subcommittee meetings is there's a nimbleness and a responsiveness in terms of how those committee meetings proceed. And the committee themselves could decide that they're, again, going to prioritize within those remaining issues, which ones need more time and are more important. And I have a huge amount of confidence in this process, both in the staffing of this committee and in the members of the committee, that they will be able to kind of navigate how much they can really bite off and what's most important to them. So, but I think it's a good thing to keep in mind that just because they've committed to doing the 11, if some rise to the top, I trust the process of sort of figuring that out. Okay, I have Alan, then Claire, then Mike.
Thanks. I'm really going to miss you, Captain Metaphor. That was a good one. And I hope Councilor-elect Randy Groves understands that Captain Metaphor position comes with the ward that he's in. So I hope he's prepared. And to Mike's point, once we do get this recommendation, it's going to be us to determine what kind of process we want to do to take that and consider that, whether or not we want to do public hearings, add more input, how do we want to do that? And we haven't even talked about that yet. So that's still to come. So, and months away. But one of the things that I was thinking about as the committee was working through its stuff, the ad hoc committee, was that we didn't really give good direction or any direction for that matter, or feedback on what kind of recommendations to bring to us, or what a good recommendation would look like. And so I started thinking about that a little bit more, and I came up with 3 things that, from my perspective, a good recommendation have in them. And the first one is that it identifies the problem that it's trying to fix, and it gives some examples of the problem that we're trying to fix. The second is that it's clear and specific about the change or the fix that is being recommended. And the third is that there's a clear and strong rationale or reasons for making the change. So, and that the recommendations need to be commensurate with the amount of, with the problem, but also with whether or not they're doable and the amount of work that it takes to get there. And so, you know, some recommendations would take an enormous amount of work for middle minor changes. So, especially around the oversight committee, and I think also, especially the rationale needs to be clear. If it's more, it needs to be more than just we think this is a good idea. I think the committee needs to be really clear about what's the rationale for proposing this change. And so once those three questions, you know, what's the problem with examples, clear and concise about the recommendation, and a clear, strong rationale or reason. For me, that becomes a good recommendation that I can look at. It allows me to evaluate it better, and it also makes it a lot more probable that I'm going to support it if I understand where it's all coming from and where it came from. So I'll just commend that back to the committee, because we didn't give that. That's just my opinion. So thank you.
Thank you, Claire, and then Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. So I really like what Alan just parsed out. I think that's a great framework for policy recommendations. I appreciate the mayor's comments and kind of regrounding us in the idea behind this ad hoc committee. And I will point out there are 2 police commission members who serve on it. And, you know, it is uncertain whether or not we'll take these recommendations and do anything with them. And Betty's quite correct that our police chief has the ultimate decision-making authority on whether or not to accept recommendations from the police commission. And also if we were to say, hey, we like these ideas, it would be up to Chief Skinner as to whether or not he wanted to adopt them. But I think the work of reviewing things, educating, you know, this wide group of community members who have various levels of education around how our city works in terms of police policy and police oversight, and then having them give some kind of feedback to us, I think is very, very valuable in light of, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement and the need for us to address, you know, systemic racism in, you know, police practices. So going back to, you know, what Jennifer raised about concerns around, you know, this is a huge body of work and even extending through April, I am not worried about you getting through this list of 11 things. I think, as you know, other counselors have said, it's the quality of the work that's going to be important. So even if, you know, you got through the 4 top tier and 1 more or 2 more items, that would be fine. I'm not going to approve an extension with the expectation that there's 11 things that come back. So I really think, and I have confidence in Mo Young, and very grateful that she's volunteering her time, and you to help the committee kind of really work through the things that rise to the top and take the time to dig into those things that rise to the top for a majority of the committee and focus on those things more intently, rather than making sure, oh, 11 things, you got to get through them. So that's how I'm thinking about this work. I think the extra time to do the work in a quality way and feel like the committee members really, as Chris pointed out, got to work together to come up with a solid set of recommendations, whatever those might end up being. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mike.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with much of what Betty and Alan and Claire have said. I think that it's important how this information comes to us, and that we keep it in appropriate context. And the reason I brought up the idea, and I think the important question, as Alan raised, is what do we do with that report and that information next? And that's why I recommended it going to the Police Commission. The Police Commission is a body we created on purpose to intentionally represent the community's values in a balanced way in their recommendation to the chief of what policy ought to be and what the community's values around that are. When I served on the Police Commission for many years, we went through the use of force policies, and that took quite a long time, and it was long enough ago that it doesn't hurt a thing to review them now, and I think that's a good idea. But that's the appropriate filter, in my opinion, for those recommendations to come both to council, but to the chief who gets to decide. And I think that gives us the kind of balanced policy recommendations that he can take without creating an unnecessary conflict of any kind. And I just want to push back a little bit on what the mayor said. There's absolutely not broad community support for many of the things that were said out loud this summer. Defunding the police does not have broad community support, nor do several of the other things that were a little heavier handed than I think the vast majority of our community would support. But there were several important things that were said that we do want to make sure we take into account. And I know the chief has mentioned that too. So how we balance which parts of this report we're willing to consider putting forward to the chief for consideration. I don't think it hurts anything for us to go through a more broad, balanced community input on these things as well that represents the community as a whole. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just for clarification, I was not suggesting that the whole community supported all of the demands that were made, just a point that many people took to the street making demands and that the council was responding to that. Okay, I think we're ready to put motions on the table. So Emily, I'll turn to you.
Move to change the date that the Ad Hoc Committee on Police Policy must complete its work from January 31, 2021 to March 30, 2021.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 1, 2. All right, that passes 6-2. Thank you. On to the second one.
Move to adopt a resolution concerning compensation for the members of the Ad Hoc Committee on Police Policy for committee and subcommittee meeting hours as set forth in attachment E.
Second.
All in favor on this motion, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1. Okay, that passes 7-1. Thank you. And finally, the third one.
Move to authorize use of the City Manager's Office General Fund as the funding source for costs associated with compensating members of the Ad Hoc Committee that exceed $12,000.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1, and that passes as well, 7-1. Thank you all very much. Great conversation. Thank you, Kevin and Kaz, for all you do and for that report. And we are adjourned until 7:30.